In the stress effect, you describe 7 best practices to manage stress. One of them is rest, of course. Awareness, rest, support, exercise, nutrition, attitude, and learning. And I know we could discuss any of those for quite some time. They all seem absolutely key to being able to manage stress. But I was very interested to find that learning was one of the key things that one can do to manage stress. Could you tell us how learning helps leaders to manage stress?
I think besides, the obvious, that if I know more about leadership, I know more about my technical responsibilities, I know more about the weapons systems, the general knowledge that I'm picking up, aside from having that available to help me make better informed decisions, learning actually stimulates different parts of the brain. It causes you to use your brain more. If you think about how skilled you were at basic mathematics when you were in high school or college compared to how skilled you are now, you probably don't do as much in your head now. You use the calculator, where you used to do it with a stubby pencil, or you did it in your head. So the skills start to fall away. Your brain's not as good at making those kinds of calculations now as they were, before. So what happens across time is the brain, if you don't use it, starts to degrade in these different mental processes which impact your decision-making ability. So by applying the 7 best practices, and particularly applying the learn, where you engage in brain activities that stimulate different components of the brain, so getting beyond just doing crossword puzzles and things like that, and getting into eye-hand coordination, which works a different part of your brain, getting into balance, standing on the balance balls, walking on uneven terrain, doing things where you have to physically balance, gives your brain a real workout because it's activating all these different muscles and responding. So that's a different part of your brain. And there are software programs out there now that will work to different ones to help your brain become sharper than it is. A colleague of mine, Elkanon Goldberg, does a lot of research on elderly and aging brains, and he's actually created this mental gym where he has his older patients come in and they do like an hour workout in his mental gym, and he's just been amazed at the amount of their ability that they're recovering by exercising their brain like that. But it helps keep us sharper. We can make better decisions even under stress if we keep our brain sharp. It delays the onset of dementia, Alzheimer's, various other diseases like that, just by exercising the brain.
When I think of the old puzzles where you might have a flat shape and you would have to fold it into see if it would fold into a cube or not, for example, I'd always felt like that was a different muscle group.
Yeah.
It was a different point of the brain that felt odd to use. And I guess that thinking of the brain as a muscle of sorts, it could atrophy if you don't use those things.
Yeah, and it does. And to make it worse, if you keep your stress level up for a long time, if you're keeping the cortisol in your system, cortisol begins to impact your hypothalamus in your brain, which is where your memory is located. So it begins to retard your ability to remember things and learn things. It also starts to kill off brain cells. So as you walk around every day with this elevated level of cortisol in your system, you're steadily killing off brain cells. I mean, a lot die every day anyway, but you can really exacerbate that, by having these high levels of stress, which make it even more difficult for you to learn, which stresses you more, which kills off more, so you can get caught up in this downward spiral.
The most recent, or a recent concept for the Army for building military strength is resilience. It's about preparing guardsmen for the rigors of service. In your book, you note one definition of resilience as 3 parts: facing down reality, the search for meaning, and ritualized ingenuity. Could you tell us a little bit about this concept of resilience and how leaders can use it?
Resilience is about bouncing back. To be able to experience a very strong stressor, be able to bend with it, not break, and then bounce back. Sometimes we use the metaphor of the palm tree on the beach when the hurricane comes and they bend way over and then they pop back up after the hurricane passes. So resilience in people is like that. Can I bend and then come back to where I was, or come back to a higher level of performance than I was before the stressor occurred? But in order to do that, it requires not just being optimistic, but it requires having a good sense of reality testing along with it. I need to really see the facts, not just be gung-ho and, oh yeah, we can do this, we can take the hill, we can do whatever, but be able to evaluate the facts with reality testing and say, here's what it's going to cost. It's going to be difficult, and it's going to cost us these things. And figure out if you can really do it and how much of it you can do and what's realistic for you. Because if you keep setting goals too high, eventually your motivation goes down when you never reach them. So you've got to set something that's, you know, within the range that you might be able to actually accomplish. The commitment is about, I've got to be committed to do this. I have to be willing to put out the effort to actually get through what it's going to take to survive the stress that I'm under now, and be able to recover. Because I can survive and just be, you know, a post-traumatic syndrome case and never recover. But people who have high resilience manage to be able, you know, to have that commitment. Viktor Frankl, in his book, Man's Search for Meaning, I mean, it's one of the most powerful books out there and stories out there about resilience and about commitment and meaning and searching for the meaning of. I'm in the, you know, this camp, death camp, and people are dying all around me. You know, why am I here? What am I supposed to do with this? And he developed a whole discipline of psychology around that while he was waiting, you know, to be gashed. He came out of that very successful, very powerful book. Talking about commitment, and that's the way you get through, being committed to do whatever it takes. Now, one of the things that he does say in his book is the best of us, meaning the best people, are not the ones who survived. And what he's saying is that your quest for survival can get to the point where you do things that maybe are not so good, that you might not be proud of later, but it helps you survive. So the people who are resilient will find a way to do it, and that leads to this, you know, constant search to be innovative, to improvise, to find a way to get around whatever that obstacle is, because you're constantly being presented with obstacles. And now I have to think out of the box. I have to innovate in some different way that I've never thought of before to get around this, to survive this. What is it that I need to do different than anything I've ever thought of in order to be able to survive? So you start working, you know, the optimism with reality testing that Jim Collins talked about with Admiral Stockdale and his time in the Hanoi Hilton in prison and watching people die of a broken heart because they were so optimistic. They thought every holiday they were going to be let go, and he would tell them, it's not going to happen. You got to have some reality. We're going to make it. We will make it, but it's not going to happen Christmas. You know, we won't know when it's coming. It'll be a surprise when it gets here. But we have to have the reality testing. We have to have the commitment, and we have to be innovative in how we work together to get out of here. You know, and he created all these different codes that they used to communicate with in the prison, to tell each other how they were doing and keep each other pumped up. And it's just amazing, you know, what all he did. So resilient people, some of it I think to some degree is innate, and then other parts of it that you can work on. So going through the resilience training that the military has out now, I think it's good in terms of learning, in terms of education, helping people understand what to focus on if they want to survive the traumatic experiences that they're going to have, and what recovery looks like. So I think the education, you know, program is good, you know, and serving that purpose.